Introducing Recyclical, making lithium-ion last forever. Recyclical's patented recycling process achieves up to 100% recovery of battery metals from lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, and aluminum. Recyclical Battery Materials Incorporated trades on the TSX Venture AMY, on the OTCQB AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit recyclico.com or phone us at 778-574-4444. Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website rickackerman.com. He's speaking to us from where today?
Sunny, well, not quite sunny, but I'm speaking to you from Florida. And as always, thanks for inviting me on, Jim.
And you're on the side of Florida that didn't get pasted by the hurricane.
No, it's true. I was surprised, but the big surprise, I make trips up to North Carolina, and I like to stop in a little place called Brunswick in Georgia. It's kind of midway to where I'm going, and it's right there hanging out on the seacoast, but it didn't get touched. So the storm had kind of an erratic pattern, and of course that will be ascribed to quote-unquote climate change, but I guess that's just the way storms move sometimes.
Well, that's why they have such a broad, semi-projected path. It could go this way, it could go that way. But, again, it's swirling and other weather systems join in and low pressure and perfect storms. Every storm is unique.
It's true. I hear that to the extent that the North Atlantic is somewhat warming, when the cold spot came down a little bit further south, it affected the trajectory of hurricanes, but they can kind of meander, and I do mean meander in a way that takes them inland at points in northern New Jersey that didn't used to experience this. The storm sort of hits, it has more warm water to track than it used to. So that's kind of interesting and observable.
Well, Fiona, which pasted the east coast of Canada, especially Newfoundland, the water, was 10, 15 degrees warmer than usual, giving the storm more energy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because usually Canada doesn't get hit by hurricanes. Even though the wind speed had dropped, the storm swell, it washed entire apartment blocks into the ocean. Pretty stormy stuff. Anyway, speaking of storms, the stock market continues to be very choppy. As we speak, it's up today, but it's had several down days again. And every time it goes up, I keep hearing from people, well, see, look, the storm is over. We can go back into the rowboat and enjoy the ocean again. Is it time to jump in the rowboat and enjoy the stock market ocean?
Well, I'm not sure if you mean is it time on the basis of the hourly clock, which is about as far ahead as you should be looking here. Maybe it is time for the next hour or so. Yeah. But the market, we're most surely in a bear market, and I think that it hasn't even begun. But it's in a very extreme state of derangement right now. I think you could only compare it to a rabid badger. So overnight, the market rose quite strongly. The index futures, the mini index futures, were up huge. And then right at the opening bell, we had this news about the news concerned inflation. The headline was core inflation hit new 4-decade high last month, and lo and behold, the market reversed in the extreme. We've had a rally that's equivalent to maybe 1,500 Dow points in the space of an hour, and or 2 hours, and if you look at the statistic and think, what the hell is that supposed to mean? And if you were trying, even if you could get past that question, and come to the next, which is, well, what are the implications for the stock market? Who the hell knows? But the market right now is being traded by machines mostly. There's a lot of algorithm-driven trading, and basically these algorithms are slugging it out like, I wouldn't say mongoose and cobra because those are two rational thinking animals, but really like a couple of rabid beasts. So that's what we have. We've got this rally today, and I would challenge anybody to make sense of these numbers that come out, whether the inflation rate or the idiotic jobs number. You know, they come out with a jobs number that, well, depending on which idiotic interpretation you use, it's either good news that the economy created jobs, or bad news because maybe it'll keep the Fed on a tightness track, or who the heck knows news because we know in our lives, in our neighborhoods, anecdotally, that whatever the jobless or the job creation numbers are, that the economy is dying. Amazon's going to be the only retailer left standing, and we still have at the kind of brick and mortars side of things, we've got the collapse coming, the obsolescence of all these properties like movie chains, you know, thousands of theaters that will never have a purpose when Hollywood, the distribution of Hollywood movies ends, which it will. And we've got all the big department stores left to close, Macy's, Nordstrom's, the best of them. And we've got cities like New York that are dying above ground, at ground, and below ground. Nobody comes to work in the office anymore, so you've got in San Francisco, 40%, the occupancy rate is, I think, the lowest ever. San Francisco's dying, but it's happening to so many other cities. So you kind of wonder what the market is celebrating, at least over these last couple hours.
Now, I'm thinking when you say dying, at least for Vancouver, Vancouver's unique among big cities where so much of the population actually lives downtown in high rises or medium rise buildings, surrounded by office blocks. So at night, the office center isn't totally deserted. There's still, you know, restaurants and bars and nightclubs and stuff where all the locals go because they live there, and they love living there because you can walk everywhere and you're not dependent on a car, which, here in Vancouver, we had $10 a gallon gasoline, which isn't far behind the West Coast in the U.S., where it was $8 a gallon.
Uh-huh. Well, I can report I was at Whole Foods yesterday, and I plucked an organic Honeycrisp apple from the bin, and when I got to the register, I discovered that I was the proud owner of a middle-sized $2.58 apple. So, you know, if Apple sold gasoline like some of the convenience stores, it would probably be $18 a gallon.
Exactly. Now, with energy, so many people are saying the Russians have proven they're not good suppliers of energy, yet Russia supplies 40% of the world's enriched uranium for nuclear reactors, and everybody's talking about using reactors to meet their energy needs. So would we still end up being dependent on Russia anyway, whether it's oil, gas, or uranium?
No, I think that the ways that they can reprocess uranium and recycle it, the technology is there for some nuclear plants that operate pretty efficiently and don't even generate the kind of mountains of waste that most people think they do. So I don't see if the world were to make that decision, and of course you don't see that coming any day soon in Europe in particular. We're kind of moving in the opposite direction. I don't think we would Putin or Russian control of certain commodity supplies I don't think it would be much of a factor.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, the U.S. dollar continues to be hot, but will this global popularity of the greenback continue?
Well, it's not popular. That's the irony. Everybody hates it. The Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese, they all like to see the dollar gone, but you don't really see them stepping up to the plate to say, here, take my currency and make it the global reserve. And the reason being that no currency in this world will be able to scale up the way the dollar has. And, when people talk about the dollar losing its hegemony, its dominance in markets, it presupposes that we're going to move all the action that's currently invested in dollars into some other currency. But if you take the derivatives market alone, which in insanely conservatively estimated terms might be around $600 or $700 trillion, but I think it's probably closer to $2 quadrillion. How do you change that market? How do you convert it from dollars to some other currency? So that's a crucial factor that I don't, as far as I know, I'm the only one who talks about it. But you can't go into some other currency. I mean, the government could impose some sort of, and I don't think this is coming either, a digital currency that would have just value for transactions and circulation. But that's not replacing the dollar as a global reserve. I think that's impossible. And it's especially impossible now since the whole global financial system is just kind of teetering. We're going to have a banking collapse, and this would not be a great time to sort of change over. Even if the system were very stable, you couldn't do it. So, and I guess there's a school of thought that says after the collapse, we'll substitute a new currency. But my feeling there is that if the U.S. government should impose this supposed digital currency that so many people yap about, we would much prefer the dollar bills in our shoe boxes and wallets, because in order for currency to work, people have to trust the creator of that currency. So I think that that's why I keep saying keep that shoebox full of ones, fives, tens, 20s, 50s, and hundreds around just in case.
Yes, and of course there's the underground economy. And I'm not just talking about drugs and the mafia, not that they really exist if they're listening, but just other transactions. Your neighbor who might be a plumber and doesn't want to declare the $60 he made from you unclogging your drain. But if there's a digital currency, I can see the real reason the government wants digital currency is so they can tax every transaction. The same way the banks right now tax you with transaction fees every time you use your debit card. If it's not you directly, it's the merchant taking that purchase. And people have told me, well, the underground economy then will start trading things like, clamshells again as currency, as a way of exchange, or what happens perhaps, gold coins or silver.
Right, and I think it'll take a while for gold and even silver, which is, of course, easier to transact at lesser values than gold, lesser valuations. But, when you have a barter economy, it'll be interesting to see what the tax side of it is. We've just put 80,000 more IRS people on the job, and back in the old days, this would have been in the 1980s, maybe 90s, there were a couple companies that were developing barter exchanges. I was involved with one called Bay Area Barter Exchange, and it was all about keeping proper records for tax purposes because every barter transaction, and I'm talking about down to the level of $50, was a taxable event. So, if a clothing store traded clothing and things like that for some carpenter who came in and built shelving and display pieces, then you would have to sort of put valuations on it to know how much you paid out, how much you'd earned, and what the benefit was. But anywhere there was a benefit, there was a tax involved.
Rick, cryptocurrencies, again, taking it on the chin as we speak, but if they go to digital currencies around the world, does that mean cryptos will live forever?
No, I mean, I've always, I love to just, every time we talk, to make the case that cryptos were never worth anything, and they still aren't worth anything, and they will never be worth anything. All right? Especially Bitcoin. You know, it doesn't matter who you ask, whether they're deeply in the crypto business and they made hundreds of millions of dollars, or they're just some Reddit trader who got in cheap and made a ton, but of course lost it all because they kept buying as Bitcoin headed up to 69,000. So, but the best argument I've heard that Bitcoin should be worth anything at all comes from a buddy of mine, Craig Weisenfluh, who he's a software developer, and his take on anything always is interesting. So he said, you know, it has value, and this is true, because in the blockchain technology, you can record every transaction, and it can be totally secure. It cannot be altered. So it's a very good medium for at least recording transactions. But in reality, we haven't seen many transactions in any Bitcoin. And all anybody does is speculate with it. So it never, but for the ability to record transactions securely, yes, Bitcoin should have a value in these transactions of perhaps, who knows, 6 cents, 8 cents, whatever, assuming it ever got down to the efficiency of credit cards. So that's the only value it has, just nominal value, because blockchain technology is very good for recording secure transactions. But to value Bitcoin at $69,000, for reasons solely owing to its scarcity, that's ridiculous. So I think that down the road we may have, the blockchain technology figure into banking, although it already does. We have other ways of securing transactions, and whether Bitcoin or crypto can be more efficient remains to be seen. So I wouldn't say it's a given that we're going to see cryptocurrency, especially in a system that's going to collapse really into itself, because everything is digital. You know, it's, the digital edifice, such as it is based on misplaced trust in a currency system it's too bloated to understand. So how are you going to trust electronic currency when we're coming out of a banking collapse that essentially wipes out the whole store of digital money, including your bank account, your savings, your checking account, and everything else?
Also, if you buy into the climate change scenario, we're going to have more severe storms. Storms wipe out power poles, power lines, generating stations. If all of your wealth is in a digital currency, how do you pay for your eggs or a can of Spam with digital currency that doesn't work?
Well, again, you don't. You just have to keep that shoebox of 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s around to pay for all kinds of things when we do go into we're going to have a bank holiday one of these days, an unscheduled one, and it's going to persist for longer than anybody had imagined. And that's when I think we'll resort to barter, and it'll take a while before silver finds its way into the barter system. If you go to a gas station in New Jersey where an attendant fills your tank, the credit card, of course, won't work because the whole digital system has unraveled, the clearing system that kind of backs it up. But if you go to the convenience store and you say, well, these are 1963 dimes and quarters, and the clerk is going to say, well, I don't know, it's just a quarter as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's going to take silver a while to catch on before it trades at a premium to the other hard currency and maybe holding, besides that shoebox full of paper.
Also, maybe they won't even recognize it as currency, because I went to a phone store recently. I paid in cash, and the young clerk didn't know how to give change. She didn't know what those little round metallic things were and what they were worth, and I'm not kidding.
Right, I know, and occasionally I try to pass $2 bills. I go to the bank occasionally, and you can order $2 bills from the Federal Reserve, and your local bank will get them for you, because when you hand them out to people on the streets who need the money, $1 doesn't go very far. So I get twos, and I get enough of them so that, as beautiful as they are, I don't hoard them. I actually spend them, but younger people, they look at them and they'll turn to someone older behind the counter and say, "Hey, is this real?"
Well, Canada got rid of its $1 and $2 bills quite some time ago and replaced them with coins. But I can imagine the reaction. They didn't know what those little metallic things were, and they probably would think the ones and twos were fake as well. Rick, you can give me all the $2 bills you want. I will not think they're fake.
Well, it's beautiful money. They've got the Constitutional Convention on the backside. There's in the engraving, there's probably 20 or 30 faces you can identify with the magnifying glass. It's such a magnificent engraving that I keep them around. I have one that was specially decorated. They used a process to emboss the front side of the bill with 4 colors. It's beautiful. And people look at that, and even though it's been doctored, it is still legal tender, whatever that means.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Indeed, a pleasure, Jim. I always appreciate the chance to connect with your audience.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.